The vinyl folder was still cold from the courthouse air conditioning when the caseworker slid it across the table and told me my mother's blood pressure medication had been swapped out for sugar pills for 6 weeks. I didn't cry. I asked what page the date started on. My name is Dale Pruitt, and I've been rehearsing this out loud in my truck for about 4 months now. Easier to say when nobody's actually listening back. Call it a confession if you want, though I've done less wrong in this than most people in it. Call it a settling of accounts instead. That's closer to true. My mother is Vera Pruitt, 81, and until 3 years ago, she still put up 40 jars of peach preserves every August on a stove that runs so hot in that kitchen you can feel it clean out on the porch. She wrote the labels in the same loopy cursive she'd used since 1974. She kept a metal recipe box on the counter, the cards inside gone soft and brown at the corners from 30 years of butter and thumbprints. That box is the only thing out of that house I actually fought for later. And I'll get to why. She raised me and my sister Deb 3 miles outside of town in the Georgia coast, small enough that both stoplights know each other by name. Our daddy shrimped for a living until his knees quit on him. And Mama ran the church nursery on Sundays and kept a garden the size of a car lot the rest of the week. Deb was always the one who stayed close. I moved 40 minutes up the coast for a construction job, married, had 2 kids, came by on Sundays and whenever the roof needed looking at. That's the whole shape of us. Nothing dramatic, just a family, same as anybody's. Mama's memory started slipping the winter she turned 78. Small things at first. A burner left on, the same story told twice in one phone call. Deb moved in that spring, said it made sense. Said she had the room and I had the family and the job that ate my Saturdays. I believed her. I want to be honest about that part, because some of what happened after is on me too. I let it be easy. I let 3 miles turn into 40 minutes turn into once a month, and I told myself that was love, being out of the way. It wasn't. It was convenience wearing love's clothes, and I didn't clock the difference until it cost something. 11 months into Deb living there, Mama's doctor of 20 years retired, and Deb switched her to a new one across the county line without telling me. 6 months after that, Deb had the house deed changed to both their names. For the taxes, she said, on a phone call that lasted 90 seconds. I asked to see the paperwork. She said she'd mail it. She never did. What I didn't understand yet was how ordinary all of it would look from the outside. No shouting, no slammed doors, just a slow closing of doors I didn't know were doors until they'd already shut. The first time I really felt it, I'd driven down on a Tuesday with a bag of Vidalia onions from my own garden, no call ahead, the way I'd always done. Deb met me on the porch instead of letting me in. She had flour on her hands and that same bored, flat voice she'd use for the rest of this whole thing, like she was reading me the weather. "She's resting, Dale. You can't just show up whenever." I stood there holding a grocery sack of onions like an idiot. That was the first door. I want to tell you what the low point actually looked like, because it wasn't a courtroom and it wasn't a fight. It was me, 41 years old, sitting in my truck in a Circle K parking lot 11 miles from my mother's house, eating a gas station biscuit for supper because I'd driven down after a full shift and Deb had told me at the door it wasn't a good night. I sat there with grease on my fingers and I started a folder, not a lawyer's folder, a manila one from the dollar store, the kind you'd use for a kid's school papers. I wrote down the date on the tab. That was the whole beginning of it. One folder, one date, in a gas station parking lot with biscuit crumbs on my shirt. I understand now that folder was the vow, even though I didn't call it that at the time. What I told myself, sitting in that truck, was, I will not let anybody move her out of that house feet first except by her own choosing. I didn't say it to Deb. I didn't say it to my wife until later. I just wrote it on the inside cover of that folder in ballpoint pen, and I want you to remember that line, because it comes back around. Around that same stretch of time, a home health aide named Renata Osei started coming to the house 3 afternoons a week, paid for out of Mama's own account. something Deb had arranged through an agency 2 counties over. I met Renata twice, both times for about 4 minutes on the porch. Both times pleasant and closed off, the way people are when they know more than they're allowed to say. She had a way of looking at me like she was deciding something. I didn't understand what, not then. The betrayal, when it finally showed its whole shape, didn't come from one big reveal. It came in pieces, mostly small, mostly the kind of thing you could talk yourself out of noticing. My mother's grocery bill dropped by more than half in a year, which made no sense for a house with 2 grown women in it. A teller at the credit union, a woman who'd known our family since before I could drive, mentioned to me at a gas pump on a Thursday that she hoped everything was all right on account of some big cash withdrawals that didn't look like Mama's handwriting on the slips. $3,000 here, $4,200 there. By the end of it, the number would land at $14,200, but I didn't know that yet. I only knew a teller's face doing something careful at a gas pump on a Thursday. What I didn't know yet, and wouldn't for months, was that Renata had been keeping a spiral notebook the whole time. Not for the agency, for herself. She told me later it was a habit from a bad situation years before, a different family, a different house, where nobody believed her word alone. So she wrote dates. She wrote what she saw. She wrote what she was told to do and what she did instead. The low point had a second half to it, and it's the part I'm least proud of. There was a Sunday, maybe 4 months into the folder, where I drove down still in my church clothes, and Deb wouldn't let me pass the front room, said Mama was napping. And through the screen door, I heard my mother's voice, thin and confused, asking somebody why the porch swing was gone. I hadn't noticed it was gone. 50 years that swing had hung there. I stood on that porch and I did nothing. I said, "All right, tell her I love her," and I drove home. I've had to make my peace with that Sunday. I didn't do enough, fast enough, and no folder full of dates changes that part. The quiet build took the better part of a year, and calling it quiet is generous, because most of it was me lying awake doing math at midnight. I started keeping copies of bank statements Mama still got mailed to her old post office box. One she'd had since before Deb moved in. One Deb didn't know about because Mama herself had forgotten to mention it. And honestly, so had I, until I found an old key in my father's tackle box. I started writing down every visit, every excuse Deb gave for why I couldn't come in, every small thing that didn't add up. 9 words to my wife one night were the only 3 sentences I said out loud about it that whole year. I think Deb's doing something. I don't know what. I'm not stopping until I do. Renata and I didn't speak again for nearly 8 months after that first porch meeting. Then, on a Wednesday in March, she called me from a number I didn't recognize and asked, careful as anything, whether I'd ever noticed bruising on my mother's arms. I said no. She said, "I have, since November." She told me she documented it. She said the word documented like it cost you something to say out loud, and now I understand it probably did, because home health aides get fired plenty fast for less. I called Adult Protective Services the next morning, a Thursday, at 8:40 a.m. in my truck in a hardware store parking lot before my shift started. I gave them everything in that manila folder. The onion visit, the porch swing, the missing deed papers, the teller at the gas pump. It felt, honestly, like handing somebody a pile of nothing. Small things, dumb, ordinary things. I remember thinking, this can't possibly be enough. I was wrong about that, though I wouldn't find out how wrong for another 6 weeks. The reveal didn't happen in a courtroom, not that day anyway. It happened in a flat, fluorescent-lit conference room at the County Health and Human Services building. 11 of us total, counting the caseworker, a state investigator, Deb, her husband Roy, me, my wife, and Renata Osei sitting quiet at the end of the table with a spiral notebook in front of her, like it was nothing at all, like it was just a notebook. Deb looked at me across that table with the same flat, bored expression she'd had on the porch a year before, and she said, "You're really doing this, Dale, over a swing?" That line has stuck with me longer than almost anything else in this whole story. Over a swing.
as if that's all it had ever been.
The caseworker opened Renata's notebook first. Dates going back 14 months, times of day, what medications had been in the pill organizer versus what should have been there. A note from January where Mama's usual heart pill had been replaced, and Renata had gone so far as to photograph the bottle label next to the actual pills inside because she said something in her gut told her nobody would take her word alone. Then came the bank records the investigator had already pulled with a subpoena I didn't even know existed. $14,200 moved out of Mama's account over 16 months in amounts small enough that no single withdrawal ever tripped a fraud alert on its own. Then came the deed. Turns out Deb never had filed the change she told me about on that 90-second phone call. She'd only started the paperwork and then never followed through once she realized the county required Mama's doctor to confirm competency at the time of signing. And by then, the new doctor, Deb herself had switched her to, had already noted early cognitive decline in the chart. Deb's own shortcut left a paper trail with her name on the shortcut. I sat there and watched my sister's face do something I hadn't seen since we were kids, since maybe the last time our daddy caught her in a lie about the truck. Not anger, something smaller and more tired than anger. She didn't confess. People don't, mostly, not clean like in a movie. What she said instead was, I was going to pay it back. Nobody in that room believed her, including, I think, herself. The aftermath wasn't a clean win either, and I want to be straight with you about that, because I've heard plenty of these stories end with the bad guy in handcuffs and everybody clapping, and that is not how any of this actually goes. There were no handcuffs. There was a guardianship transferred to me, a restitution order Deb is still slowly paying off, and a schedule that'll take her past 2031. And a plea deal on the financial exploitation charge that kept her out of any real jail time on account of her being a first-time offender and, the judge said, a caregiver under documented strain. I didn't love hearing that phrase. I still don't. But I understand now that the law isn't in the business of matching consequences to how mad you are. And some days, that's the hardest part of all this to swallow. Deb and I don't speak much. Roy, her husband, does a little. He sent a card that Christmas, the first one since all of it, with a short note that said he was sorry for not stepping in sooner, that he'd known some of it and looked away because it was easier than the alternative. It wasn't enough. I don't think he thought it was either. But it was something, and I've come to believe you take the something when it's honestly offered, even when the somebody who really owes you the apology never quite gets around to giving it whole. Mama lives with me and my wife now. She has good days and foggy ones. She still knows my name most mornings, which is more than we were told to expect a year ago. The porch swings back, a new one hung in the same spot, and some evenings she'll sit out there and ask where the peach trees went, and I tell her they're at the old house still, same as always, even though none of us have set foot on that property in over a year. Some lies are just kindness with the truth trimmed off the edges. I've made my peace with that one. The recipe box sits on my own kitchen counter now. I use maybe 3 of the cards in it. My wife uses a few more. Mostly it just sits there, corners soft, cursive fading a little more every year. And some Tuesday mornings I'll open it for no reason at all, except that it's still hers, still here, still ours to keep. I think about that folder from the Circle K parking lot sometimes, the one with a single date written on the tab in ballpoint pen. I think about the vow I wrote inside the cover that nobody but me ever read. I kept it. Not because I'm any kind of hero in this. I let a year go by longer than I should have. I said all right through a screen door when I should have pushed it open, and I'll carry that particular Sunday for the rest of my life. I kept the vow anyway, eventually, late, imperfectly, the way most promises actually get kept in real families instead of movies. So here's my question for you, and I mean it plainly. If you had a folder like mine sitting half-finished in a drawer somewhere, one date written down and nothing after it, what would it take for you to open it back up? Tell me in the comments. And if any part of this sounded like your own family in even the smallest way,
Share it with somebody who needs to hear that the small, boring, ordinary evidence is usually the kind that ends up mattering most.